I want to invite your attention to a text. I found out too late that this is the same text that Dr. Faison had preached this afternoon, but when I found out, it was too late to change. So God must have a word for somebody else tonight from this text. 1 Kings chapter 19 verses 1 through 8. 1 Kings chapter 19 verse 1 through 8. And I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version of Scripture. And you'll find words recorded like these. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life like the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Then he was afraid, and he got up and fled for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and he left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a solitary broom tree. He asked that he might die. "It is enough now, O Lord. Take away my life, for I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the broom tree and fell asleep. And suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Get up and eat." He looked, and there at his head was a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came a second time, touched him, and said, "Get up and eat. Otherwise the journey will be too much for you." He got up and ate and drank, and then he went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. I'll read verse 9. At that place he came to a cave and spent the night there. This is the word of the Lord. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God shall stand forever. Would you pray with me now for just a moment? Lord, do it again. Speak to me again. Touch us again. Send your power again. Send your anointing again. And we'll give you praise for it. Let your word do what you sent it to accomplish. Let it have free course in this place. Comfort the disturbed, disturb the comfortable. Change our thinking so that we might change how we live. In Jesus' name. And the people of God said together, amen. I want to talk tonight from the subject, touched by an angel. Touched by an angel. Reverend Shalita, one of the first books that I was initially given to read at the beginning of my seminary journey was a book by Reinhold Niebuhr. And the name of the book was Leaves from the Notebook of a Tame Cynic. The book is about the frustrations and joys he experienced during his years as a pastor. It's a primer for young ministers, and the book provides reflections and insights for those engaged in challenging yet the infinitely rewarding occupation of ministry. I was not pastoring when I initially enrolled in seminary. In fact, I had no intentions of pastoring. I was working in higher education as a director of admissions for a community college. I thought I was going to heaven from Shelby State Community College. But I felt that I could benefit from theological education and the tools that it provided for those who were serious about a call to ministry. I had just accepted the call to preach preach my trial sermon, and my heart had been captured and set on fire by this God that I wanted so desperately to serve. With the blessing of my pastor, who believed in the authenticity of my call, and who was very affirming of women in ministry, with the enthusiasm of my church, I had a mind to live for Jesus all of my days. That is why I thought it was so strange that the seminary professor would give us this book at the beginning of our seminary journey. I thought to myself, why in the world would he give us a book with a title like this? Cynicism, skepticism, doubt, and frustration were the farthest things from my mind. The power of saying yes to God is beyond anything that we could ever imagine. I am still convinced, after all these years in ministry, that one of life's greatest privileges is to serve the Lord. I'm still convinced that one of life's greatest privileges is to be called by God, to work with God on God's agenda in ways that have eternal significance. And I am fully convinced that only eternity will reveal the impact of a life poured out for God. Now, more than 30 years from that initial seminary journey, I realize in retrospect that my naivete would soon have a reality check. Little did I know that serving and working for the Lord was not going to always be as easy and joyous as I expected. Ministry, in the words of Reverend Tracy Blackman, begins with an unqualified yes. But it is a yes that one has to keep repeating over and over. You don't just say yes when you accept the call. You have to keep saying yes. You have to say yes when you're tired. You have to say yes when people don't accept you. You have to say yes when you're frustrated. You have to say yes when you want to quit. It is a yes that requires being repeated over and over again. Because what I discovered is that a yes to God invites opportunity and opposition. Opposition can destroy one's resolve. Opposition will break one's will. Opposition is a killer of dreams. Opposition is what causes so many people to quit. Opposition is what causes pastors to give up, leave the ministry, and go sell insurance. Opposition is what discourages people from working in ministry. It's what robs public servants of their optimism and their idealism. Opposition will make you tired. There is nothing more discouraging than opposition. There is probably nothing more debilitating, more demoralizing than opposition. And while opposition is real for anyone in ministry, male or female alike, I must say in full disclosure that opposition for women in ministry can be particularly challenging because of what Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw calls intersectionality. It's a term that describes the interlocking forms of oppression that black women and women of color face that have significantly greater impact upon our lives in general and our lives specifically. Beyond the issues of interlocking oppressions of class and gender and race, there are systems of opposition. Sexism and patriarchy and misogyny are the three elephants in the room that are deeply embedded in the church and society. Touch your neighbor and say, she ain't talking about you, she's talking about a system. These systems of opposition contribute to gender bias, marginalization, oppression, and the invisibility of women despite a call from God. I will never forget how people told members of my church that they were going to hell because they sat under a woman. I will never forget how people threatened our church and said that if you elect that woman, they're going to put y'all out the convention and you're not going to have any men at your church. These systems of opposition are undergirded by a notion of gender inferiority and some theologies that women are less than fully human. And I would also say that while I don't think that most of us are really surprised by the presence of opposition, we are often perplexed by its intensity. Male and female alike are often taken aback by the length and the breadth that our enemies and our adversary will go to discourage us, to defeat us, to derail us, to sabotage us, and ultimately get us to quit. In retrospect, I understand why that book was assigned to us, because a yes to God invites opportunity and opposition. And it is because of opposition that the prophet Elijah is sitting under a broom tree, half depressed, half suicidal, resignation letter in hand, ready to give up, because he found out that despite his gifts, despite his anointing, despite his amazing victory on Mount Carmel, that his work was more difficult and stressful than he had imagined. And although he had been a blazing tower of courage on Mount Carmel, just one chapter later, somebody shout, one chapter later, he was struggling to remain faithful, focused, and fearless. This is the prophet Elijah, who unapologetically stood up to King Ahab, challenged Ahab and the false prophets on Mount Carmel to demonstrate the power of God and the weakness and the impotence of idol gods. This is Elijah of chapter 17, who stood up to King Ahab and made the fearless declaration that as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will neither be dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. This is Elijah, who prophesied to a widow, a single parent, during a famine in Zarephath, with such conviction that she gave him the first serving of her last meal. This is Elijah, who had personally experienced God's provision when the brook Kerith dried up and his meals were FedExed to him by a dirty bird. This is Elijah, the prophet who boldly confronted his own people regarding what Dr. Vanessa Lovelace would call their two-timing relationship with God. And while I don't celebrate the killing of anyone as a model for 21st century ministry, Elijah is portrayed as a paradigm of strength against a massive army of prophets. This is Elijah, the prophet, according to the words of Dr. Frank A. Thomas, who possessed an unqualified allegiance to God's universal domain. But just one chapter later, somebody shout, one chapter. All it takes is one crisis. All it takes is one disappointment. All it takes is one fight. All it takes is one betrayal. Just one chapter later, after an amazing victory, one chapter later, after witnessing the power of God and fire fall from heaven, one chapter later, after slaying all the false prophets of Baal, one chapter later, after hearing that his opposition was threatening to take his life, Elijah is ready to resign his prophetic assignment because of opposition. Matter of fact, he says he's ready to die. He feels that his ministry is of no consequence and that he is no better than his predecessors. The pressure and stress of opposition has worn him down and weakened his resolve to remain committed to his prophetic assignment. How does one sink so low after such a major victory? How does one go from a mountaintop experience to sitting under a broom tree in the wilderness? On Mount Carmel, we see Elijah, the great spiritual leader, saving Israel by his faith, his fortitude, and his faithfulness. But just one chapter later, he has fledgling faith. He is fatigued and he's ready to die. At a time when prospects for nationwide spiritual revival was probably at its peak, the prophet flees in discouragement and abandons his assignment without spiritual leadership. What should have been his finest hour was one of his worst moments. How could he shift from victory to defeat? Perhaps Elijah came to the realization that some of us have come to, and that is, while we work for God, our base is in enemy territory. You ought to tell somebody, I work for God, but my base is in enemy territory. And because the base is in enemy territory, there will always be an enemy to fight. Can you tell somebody there will always be an enemy to fight? Opposition is inevitable when your base is in enemy territory. Elijah had to fight. Nehemiah had to fight. David had to fight. Deborah had to fight. Yes, God has called us and God is on our side, but there will always be opposition. That despite our gifts and graces, despite our faithfulness and commitment, despite our assignment, despite the undeniable evidence of the Lord's hand upon our lives, there will always be some spirit who can potentially derail every ounce of spiritual passion that we have. For every David, there's a big brother. For every David, there's a Goliath. For every Paul, there's a Demas, and Alexander the coppersmith. For every Absalom, there's a Ahithophel. For every David, there's an Absalom and a Ahithophel. For Martin Luther King, it was Bull O'Connor. For Jesus, it was the scribes and the Pharisees. When your base is in enemy territory, as Dr. Turman told us today, when we are in the fight for our lives with a Pharaoh who is relentless in his pursuit, when we are in a fight complex of evil that dominates human life, a fight that produces a wretchedness, powers and principalities, demonic energy that subverts human life, that is hostile in character and opposed to God. We work in enemy territory. And working in enemy territory and fighting opposition can weaken your soul and create a weariness that is beyond description. So it's because of opposition that Elijah concluded that he didn't have what it took to finish his assignment. Can I tell you that opposition is what makes the work of transformation so difficult? If you do this long enough, you'll find that there are some days that you feel like you can't finish. If you do this long enough and you're passionate enough, you will find that there are some days that you don't have what it takes to go through. The physical, mental, emotional, psychological, and spiritual challenges can weaken your resolve to finish well. Sometimes we feel so depressed about our work and ourselves, so distracted by the quicksand of comparison and the ever-present voice that whispers to us that we are failures or the incessant complaining and criticism, some of our European counterparts just walk off the job. But because we feel like we have a charge to keep and a God to glorify, we try to stay the course even though we feel as if we want to quit. Elijah felt so despondent that he was ready to die. He said, "Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors." But Elijah wasn't the only one. Moses wanted to die. Job wanted to die. Jeremiah wanted to die. And Jonah tried to die. Like Elijah and Jeremiah and Moses and Jonah and King and Malcolm and Fannie Lou Hamer, sometimes we feel that we don't have the grace to finish the assignment, the courage to finish the assignment, the strength to finish the assignment, the fortitude to finish the assignment. This is where Elijah was, a major prophet with a major assignment and little power. No fuel, no power, no resolve. You might say he had accepted a tremendous assignment, but he was ready to quit before his 90 days were up. The same Elijah that had the tenacity to spend days in intercessory prayer for Israel and for rain is now too tired to keep going. But he is just getting started. For some of us, Elijah's story is our story, because the truth is, working for transformation and reform can be tiring. It can be exhausting and draining. It can be tiring and exhausting and draining to challenge the status quo. It can be tiring and exhausting and draining to not only critique the evils and shortcomings of the present order, but to attempt to do something about them. It can be tiring and exhausting and draining to rise above individual and personal concerns to focus on communal and public issues. It can be tiring and exhausting and draining to fight for freedom and liberation of all people, some of whom don't even know they're not free. It can be tiring and exhausting and draining to remain in the struggle until the end. Perhaps that's why Nehemiah prayed, "Lord, strengthen my hands," because the work of transformation, the work of reform, the work of working in enemy territory can be tiring, exhausting, and draining. Consider the price that so many of the faithful have paid. Somebody knows that there's nothing like having to fight another enemy, because opposition will make you tired. Opposition will drain you. Opposition will wear you out. Somebody shout tired. It will make you tired. You're in worship, but you're tired. Working in ministry, but tired. Wouldn't want to do anything else but tired, because we work in enemy territory. Tired because there's always an enemy to fight. Tired, but you are not finished. Can you preach to somebody and say you're tired but you ain't finished? Tired but you still have work to do. Elijah was tired and ready to die and end his prophetic assignment. He is in Beersheba, which belonged to Judah, and legally well beyond the region of opposition. And he leaves his servant in Beersheba because he is done. And the clue to his intentions is illustrated by the fact that he dismisses his servant at Beersheba. You see, Beersheba is the southernmost limit of Yahweh's land. He dismisses him at Beersheba to signify that he's abandoning it altogether, because a day's journey into Negeb is as far as he plans to go. But there's a problem with the picture. Negeb was not his final destination. Negeb was not the assignment that God gave him. The distance to his final destination was at least another 150 miles. But he was already tired and ready to give up. But God does to Elijah what God does to a lot of us. God would not accept Elijah's resignation. Do I have anybody in here who can testify that there have been some times that you wanted to quit, you wanted to give up, but God wouldn't accept your resignation? Because Elijah still had work to do. Tell somebody your assignment is not finished. You might be tired, but your assignment is not finished. It was in Negev, a desert region in Beersheba, that he lies down weary under a broom tree and prays for Yahweh to take his life. All that he's lived for, his prophetic ministry, Yahweh's people are gone, and he's requesting that despite his previous successes, despite his previous victories, he is convinced that he is now no better than his predecessors or his predecessors in the prophetic ministry and exhausting work. But before he completes his exit interview, Elijah falls asleep. He falls asleep under a broom tree, and he's awakened by a still small voice, the voice of God, that interrogates him about his despondency. The voice asks him, "What are you doing here?" And Elijah goes on to tell him how he's been zealous for God, how he has fought and feels like he's the only one trying to fight for God. We find that God would send him back the way he came. God would send him back to the place where he strayed from his mission. Send him back to anoint Hazael, to anoint Jehu, grandson of Nimshi, to be king of Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, as his replacement. Just when Elijah thought his ministry was over, God renewed the prophet's commission. I don't know about you, but I want to give God some praise right there, that just when you think the opposition is going to stop you, God will show you that there's another level that you have yet to achieve. What I've learned from this text is that opposition doesn't stop. There's always an enemy to fight. There will always be forces of malevolent, malicious, hostile, harmful, vengeful, vindictive, deliberate, injurious, evil forces that are antagonistic toward God, God's people, and God's work. Because a yes to God is an invitation to opportunity and opposition. But notice that even though God refused Elijah's resignation, God gave Elijah what he needed to fulfill his assignment. When he was most vulnerable, when he was at his breaking point, when he was ready to quit, when he was ready to break, God gave and sent Elijah what he needed most. He sent him rest, he sent him renewal and refreshment. God sent an angel to strengthen and refresh him, and to speak to him animating and encouraging words. When he believed himself to have finally reached the end of Mount Carmel, suddenly there was an incomprehensible turn of events. God showed up at the same broom tree where Elijah was praying to die. It was at that same broom tree that God gives him back his life. I wonder, is there anybody in here tonight who can testify that there have been some moments that you thought it was over, but God gave you back your life? May I suggest that the God of Elijah is a God who sustains, a God who delivers, even when his servants cannot see God as clearly because we are overwhelmed and overextended. But I stopped by to give God some praise tonight, that even when I can't see God, God can see me. Can you tap your friend and tell them, even when I can't see God, God can see me? You see, God sent Elijah the right help at the right time. When Elijah was sleeping under the same tree, God sent an angel. And I'm happy to report that despite the opposition that wearies our soul, God will send us an angel. You ought to look at somebody and say, I know you're tired. I know you're frustrated. I know you want to give up. But God will send an angel. Somebody to minister to us when the burden is too heavy. Have you ever had an angel to come along and minister just when you need it, at the right place, at the right time? God sent somebody to come and see about you. I ought to have a few witnesses who are committed to transformation, who will testify that when you look back over your life, at the right time, at the right place, God sent some help. God will send an angel. God will send some help. Angels are messengers who carry out God's wishes. And I'm still fully persuaded that God is still sending angels. Angels serve and execute God's will. Angels minister and watch over us. Angels encamp round about us. God sent an angel to minister to Hagar. God sent an angel to lead his people out of Egypt. It was an angel that shut the mouth of the lion. God sent an angel to deliver Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. God sent an angel with a heavenly announcement to tell Mary that she would conceive a son and his name would be Jesus. God sent an angel to tell Elizabeth that she would conceive a son and his name would be John. It was angels who announced the birth of Christ. It was angels who told Joseph to take Mary as his wife. It was an angel that warned the wise men not to return to Herod. It was an angel that warned Joseph to flee from Egypt. God sent an angel to minister to Jesus in the wilderness. God sent an angel to strengthen Jesus in the garden. And early Sunday morning, God sent an angel to roll back the stone from the tomb. God sent an angel to lead Peter out of prison. Angels were present at the resurrection. Angels announced that Jesus would return. And when he comes on the clouds, angels will be with him. Every eye shall see him. Every knee shall bow. Every tongue shall confess that Jesus is Lord. I wish I had just a few people who have ever been tired, who have ever wanted to quit, who have been on the edge, who have felt defeated, who have felt forsaken, but you survived to preach to your neighbor and tell him, I was touched by an angel. I was touched by an angel. God sent help because God knew what was ahead. Angels help us fight. Angels give heed to God's word. Angels carry out specific assignment. Angels help Elijah to come out swinging. And I wish I had just a few people that could help me close this sermon and thank God for the angels. The angels of the Lord encamps round about them that fear him and deliver him. He shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. Angels are ministering spirits sent to serve those who inherit salvation all night, all day, all night, all day. Angels keep a watching over me. You ought ought to grab somebody. Tell them, I've been touched by an angel. I've been touched by the hand of God. I'm a witness that God will keep you. I'm a witness that God will preserve you. I'm a witness that God won't let your foot slip. I'm a witness that God will lift up your head. I'm a witness that God will send some help. Grab that hand. Shake that neighbor's hand. Tell him, neighbor, I've been touched by an angel all night, all day. They're my security, my protection, all around me. They watch over me. Find somebody that's been through something and they survived it, and tell them, I'm so glad that you didn't quit. I'm so glad that you didn't give up. I'm so glad that you held on. I'm so glad that you kept standing. I'm so glad that trouble don't last always. Weeping may endure, yes sir, for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Do I have any witnesses? Do I have any believers? Do I have any survivors? Find 3 people. Say, I should have been crazy. I ain't supposed to be here. Should have lost it. Should have slit my wrist. Should have jumped off a bridge. Should have been cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But God sent help. Won't God send help? Just in the nick of time. May not come when you want him. Yeah! But he's always on time. Shout yeah! Yeah! Yes! Yeah! Find somebody. Tell him, I've been touched by an angel. God sent some help. Won't God send some help? Just when you need it most. Do I have any help? Do I have any company? That's how you graduated from college. That's how you got out of seminary. That's how you didn't drop out. That's how you didn't quit. That's how you stayed with it. Because the race isn't given, yes sir, to the swift nor the strong, but to the one that will endure until the end. Tell him, thank you for how you brought me. Thank you for how you taught me. Thank you for how you kept me. Yeah. Thank you. You never left me. Give him glory. Give him praise for the help. For the help. For the help. Somebody thank God for the help. Touch your neighbor. Say, you can't see God, but God can see you. Sees your tears. Sees your frustration. Sees your disappointment. Sees your depression. Sees you want to give up. God still sends somebody to help you. Do I have anybody that can give God your best praise? Do I have anybody that could just bless the Lord, oh my soul, and all that's within me? I will bless. I will bless. I will bless his holy name. Give him glory. Give him praise. Tell somebody, I've been touched by an angel, and the joy that I have, the world, yes sir, didn't give it to me, and the world can't take it away. Clap your hands, lift up your heads, O ye gates, be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory, I mean, who is this King of glory? He is the Lord, strong and mighty. Lift up your head, O ye gates, be ye lifted up. Tap him on the chin and say, lift up your head. Tap somebody on the chin and say, lift up your head. Lift up your head. God's going to help you. God's going to see you through. Hitherto, the Lord has helped us. Do I have anybody with a hitherto praise? I wish I had just a few people that can raise your Ebenezer. Here's my Ebenezer. Raise that Ebenezer. Raise that rock and give God your best praise. Because thus far, look at somebody shout, thus far, the Lord has helped me. When folk walked out, when money was funny and change was strange, when lights went out and crowds got thin, when friends walked out, God stepped right in. Open your mouth and give God the fruit of your lips. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Thank him for his ministering angels. Thank him for defending angels. Thank him for angels of defense. Thank him for guardian angels. All night, all day, angels keep a watch over me. You're going to get it in a minute. All night and all day, angels keep watching over me. All night and all day, angels keep a watching over me. All night and all day, angels keep a watch over me. Shout yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Come on, clap your hands and give him praise. Come on, clap your hands and give him glory. Come on, clap your hands because he's helping my voice. Come on, clap your hands and tell him thank you. Oh, I feel my help now. Ain't nobody mad but the devil. Opposition when I preach. Opposition trying to get it out. But thanks be to God that God sent an angel to sit on my shoulder and touch my vocal cords so that I could holler like I want to holler. Somebody, anybody, everybody, help me. Bless the Lord. Somebody shout, I've been touched. I've been touched. Just tap somebody, say, I've been touched. I've been touched. I've been touched by an angel. And I hear the Spirit say the victory is not that you did not have the opposition. The victory is that you still here in spite of it. Look at somebody and say, can I shout now or do I have to wait? I don't think you heard what I said. I said the victory is not that you did not have the opposition. The victory is that you live to tell about it. I dare you to find somebody, just tell them one thing God brought you through. I dare you to find just one somebody and tell them just one thing God helped you. I dare you to tell just one somebody how God spared you. I dare you to tell, come on, you talk to the wrong neighbor. I dare you to come on, find somebody to tell them one thing, just one thing, just one thing. He saved my home. He came to see about me. He rescued my children. He made a way out of no way. He opened some doors that nobody could shut. He shut some doors that nobody could open. And when the enemy came to eat up my flesh, they stumble and fail. And though a host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. And though war should rise against me, in this will I be confident. One thing have I desired, yes sir, of the Lord, and that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord forever, to behold, come on Bible, read the beauty of his temple, and to inquire in his tabernacle. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in the secret of his tabernacle. Shall he hide me? He shall set me upon a rock. And now shall my head be lifted up above my enemies. I will sing, yeah, I will sing sacrifices of joy. Open your mouth enemy was trying to do. I see how he was trying to run interference, trying to steal my destiny, trying to steal my purpose, trying to keep me from fulfilling everything that God had. But I thank God that God kept me alive. I thank God that God spared my life. Most of all, I thank God that he spared my mind. You ought to just grab your head and thank him for keeping your mind. Somebody shout, I've been touched, I've been touched, I've been touched. God will send some help. Won't God send help? I said God will send help. Morning, night, or noon, God will send some help. Even when you don't have help, God will send help. Can I tell you, I'm going to my seat. But I'm a witness that God will send help. That when you are about to give up, when you think that you've heard God wrong, just when you think that all of the things that people have said to you about your ministry and about the assignment and about the vision that God has given you, that you miss God, God will send somebody. I wish I had somebody that could just bless him right there. I never forget, we were trying to build a new sanctuary. And we were having such a hard time. Banks wouldn't help us. We tried to float a bond and the bond issue didn't go through. And we had bought Revenue Lane a big house next door to our old building. And I remember when the bond issue fell through, I could hear all of the tapes in my head of everybody telling me what I could not do and what couldn't be done, and that it wasn't going to happen, and that God wasn't going to come through. And I used to drive up to that big house every day. Before I would go into my office, I would drive up to that big house every day and kneel on the steps of that raggedy building. Nothing but glass, dirt, windows broken, shutters flapping, concrete crumbling. And I would drive up to that house every day and get on my knees and pray and ask God to bless and bring it to pass. And when we found out that that bond issue was not going to come through, I felt so discouraged. I felt so disappointed because I knew that the banks weren't going to help us. And the bond was our last resort. And I almost got an attitude with God. I drove up to the church that day and I decided, Carlos, that I wasn't going to stop and pray in front of that big house. But I decided I would go ahead and do it anyway. And I got on my knees and I was praying, and I heard somebody drive up behind me. It was the mailman. And I looked around and he said, Pastor, I've been watching you pray every day. He said, and I see you praying, and I believe that you're praying for God to bless you to build that building. He said, don't worry about it. God's gonna make it happen. Shift his gears and drove away. God sent the mailman to bring me some mail, to let me know that everything was gonna be all right. You ought to just hug somebody and tell them God's gonna send you some mail. God is just sending you some mail. God is just sending you some mail to let you know that everything is going to be all right. He's sending some help. He's sending some support. He's sending somebody to let you know that go hug somebody. somebody else and tell them, God is sending you some mail tonight. God is sending you some mail tonight to let you know that everything. Come on and worship him in this place. Come on and give him glory in this place. Come on and open your mouth and tell him thank you. Come on and thank the Lord that it's going to happen. It's going to come to pass. God's going to do it in God's own time. Hallelujah to Jesus.
Trust me, trust me. I